everyone, welcome to MediaNama. In March 2017, a journalist called Debayan Roy attempted to demonstrate that one person could get multiple Aadhaar enrollment numbers. While Roy did end up getting two Aadhaar enrollment numbers, one of which was for his actual Aadhaar card, the UIDAI, or the authority that issues Aadhaar cards, also filed an FIR against him under the Aadhaar Act and the Indian Penal Code. In case you're wondering why we are discussing all this in 2025, the reason for that is that the lawyers in this case have been debating the intent behind Roy's actions. While Roy's lawyers have argued that he had no intent to cause any harm, but rather took actions in public interest as a part of a sting operation, UIDAI is concerned that the case could set a precedent where Section 34 of the Aadhaar Act, which deals with impersonation for the purposes of Aadhaar enrollment, could end up getting diluted as a result of the case. We have with us Nikhil, the editor of MediaNama, to go over the specifics of what this case means in the context of freedom of press and of those who point out issues within the Aadhaar system. Hi, Nikhil. So could you just start us off by giving us a sense of the context behind this court case from 2017?
Thanks, Kamya. From what I remember, what had happened with Debayan Roy was that he'd gone to get an Aadhaar enrollment for himself, and he noticed that the enrollment center was also enabling the creation of a fake ID. This is how of a fake ID, because Aadhaar is not a new ID. It's built on top of an existing ID. So you have to have a passport or a driving license, etc., etc. And on the basis of the veracity of that ID, they create an Aadhaar. And they did this to speed up enrollment. So there is, for example, no police verification that takes place in case of Aadhaar, unlike in the case of let's say, a passport. So invariably, the problems of trying to enroll people speedily and the gaps in the system that you've created allow for exploits. And that's what this is, that if someone needed an Aadhaar and they needed a prior ID, like a ration card or a driving license or a passport, and if they didn't have one, then enrollment agencies that were largely being paid on the basis of how many people they enroll were optimizing for enrolling as many as possible, and because they would make more money that way. And so I'm not sure if that was a specific case here, that this was not a government but an outsourced enrollment agency. What happened here was that he noticed that they were offering to create fake IDs for people on the basis with other Aadhaars would be generated. So Debayan applied for it, and this is something, for example, that Ajay Bhushan Pandey at the GCCS summit had mentioned. Ajay Bhushan Pandey was the then CEO of UIDAI. So he mentioned that he had applied initially in his own name. Then he went back the next day intending to do a sting operation and indicate that Aadhaars can be made using fake IDs, and got a fake ID to create an Aadhaar. Now, his objective here was to demonstrate that this practice is taking place. And so, in my opinion, and what I remember Ajay Bhushan Pandey saying at GCCS was that because both the IDs were in the system, he got an Aadhaar in the wrong name. And, in a very crass manner, Pandey joked at GCCS, which is the global conference that India was hosting with mostly foreign delegates, that, we gave him an Aadhaar, and I don't know whether it was a choice or just a part of the process, which was in the wrong name. And he says that he'd applied for it to be fixed and changed, and it's not been done because let this be a case for everyone, that his child should go to school and say that my daddy's name is so-and-so. Now, that's crass and disgusting as far as I'm concerned, right? In my opinion. But I don't think I would then therefore question the intentionality between the UIDAI going after Debayan here. Because what Debayan is doing is effectively indicating that there's a flaw in the system. So for every Debayan that has been found as having applied with a fake ID, how many millions are there that haven't? And over the years, we've seen instances of, for example, Pakistani nationals who were spies in India being caught having fake Aadhars. We know of instances where entire villages have got the same, literally got the same date of birth. So the Aadhaar system is full of flaws. And one of the ways of ensuring that you don't have flaws is that you don't punish the people who point the flaw out. Any law that says that basically criminalizes whistleblowing or criminalizes proving that there's a fault in the system with the objective of reporting on it so that people understand that there is a problem that needs to be fixed. Because, if that activity is deemed criminal or illegal, then your system will be full of flaws and you will be left with a problematic system which is not necessarily reliable, like Aadhaar. So there's another instance here. If you go back to what Rasna Kher had reported about Aadhaar, right? She found that there was a WhatsApp group where people were selling access to Aadhaar admin rights. Now, how this worked was because they had outsourced Aadhaar enrollment to village centers, etc., etc. Some of them had a lot of churn in employees. So for every time, if they had to get someone validated, verified from UIDAI in order to do the enrollment, that entire process would have been cumbersome and next to impossible for the UIDAI to manage because they were at that point in time trying to speed up the enrollment in Aadhaar so that they could reach their targets. And the case in the because Aadhaar was being challenged for lack of privacy protections, they were trying to get as many people on board as quickly as possible, so it would become a fait accompli, right? Now, I don't know about this is what their intention was, but this is how it was playing out as the way I saw it then. So they actually, so these folks on the WhatsApp group were, because they had read-write access and the ability to make anyone an admin, were basically selling admin access for $500 a pop. So $8, 500 rupees at that, 500 rupees, $8 at that time was what they were charging for someone to have the ability to read and write and edit and modify the Aadhaar database. That's what the news report said as far as I can remember. So we don't know what kind of flaws that exist. And they filed an FIR against Rasna Khera for reporting this as well. So any system, like I said, that is going after people who are finding flaws and gaps in the system is not optimized to actually run in a manner that it addresses flaws. It's run in a manner in which it addresses perception, because it's effectively they don't care whether it's flawed. They just want to reach as many enrollments as possible, as quickly as possible. So invariably, what the UIDAI would issue as statements was that there is no breach in the database, or there's been no breach of Aadhaar, which is a technical phrase which means that someone has, without permission, infiltrated it. So in case of Rachna Khera, that's the statement that they issued, and that's a fact. There was no breach. The anomaly that anyone could sell read-write access was actually, it was created as a part of the process because they were able to enroll anybody at all, right? In Debayan's case, because they were trying to speed up enrollment, any ID would work without verification or validation. And so the flaw was a part of the system that he exposed.
Right. So one of the things that the Debayan's lawyer mentioned in the hearing of this case was that under the Puttuswamy case, there were 6.91 crore biometric deduplication rejections. And basically what he was saying was that has the UIDAI registered cases against these 6.9 registered FIRs against these 6.9 crore people who made requests, or are they making an example out of Debayan? So one of the things that I was wondering was, is there a pattern to what we're seeing in the Debayan case? Have there been other instances where the UIDAI sort of took action against people who were acting as whistleblowers or trying to point out flaws in the system?
So I already pointed you towards what happened in case of Rasna Khera and her reporting, right? And and from what it indicated, from the way Ajit Bhushan Pandey said this, and you can validate this with the video of GCCS, which is still online. It seemed as if they were making an example of him. Whether they had the intention of doing this or not, I don't know, but very clearly, for all the rejections that happened because of deduplication issues, we haven't heard of millions of FIRs being filed. So clearly, this was a widely publicized instance because this was reported in a national news channel like CNN News 18, at that time CNN IBN. So and what does that impact have, right? When you file an FIR against a journalist like that, other journalists think twice before reporting something like this because they feel that they are at risk, right? Look at what also happened in case of the Center for Internet and Society, which published a research report that indicated that the government itself was leaking Aadhaar number details and personal information because government departments were publishing spreadsheets, right, of uh, of people with their identity information, not their biometrics, but with their Aadhaar numbers. In fact, the UIDAI several times have issued note statements saying, do not disclose your Aadhaar number in public. But you also had R.S. Sharma, who published his own Aadhaar number online. And then people were able to find information about him and his family using that. So there are tangible risks which the government has largely been ignoring. I'm not saying they're ignorant of it, but to me, it appears that they're ignoring the issues that we've seen and going after people who are pointing these issues out, like they did in case of CIS.
Interesting. So, one of the things that I heard the judge say when I was reporting on this case was that no one got hurt here, no one got misled, nobody incurred any loss from Debayan's actions. So, I was just wondering, should the principle of, no actual harm be codified as a defense for security researchers and journalists, especially in cases like this?
So, again, one, I would say that there's been actual harm to Debayan Roy. He's had to go to court and go through this process. And to my mind, the harm has actually been caused by the UIDAI. I very strongly feel that they acted against a journalist who was doing the right thing. And this impacts the freedom of the press. It impacts the freedom of people to report issues. There was no malintent behind what Debayan was doing very clearly over here. He was trying to prove that the system is flawed, right? I don't think actual harm should be the metric here because if a security researcher, without the intention of, for example, making money of it, is exposing a flaw, they should have the ability to do that. If there is some actual harm that happens in the process of that being exposed, right? So, for example, if the UIDA had stopped enrollment at that point in time, and therefore, if let's say someone needed an Aadhaar for a hospital for let's say for a child's admission in school, and they weren't able to get it because Aadhaar enrollment had stopped at that point in time, would you say that's actual harm? I don't know. So there are instances where there can be harm that is perceived because of a certain action that takes place. I don't think that should be the real barometer for how we do this. But I do feel that there should be a provision to protect journalists and whistleblowers and security researchers who are trying to find problems, because with technical systems, as we evolve, as we become more and more digitized, we need to be able to find these gaps, because without people finding and reporting these gaps, there is potential for actual harm. Security vulnerabilities will not be reported if you go after people who report the security vulnerabilities. So often, even after security vulnerabilities are reported to organizations and to government, they don't act on them. And the researchers who can see this wide gaping hole because people's personal data is being leaked in many of these cases, have no choice but to go public with it, because that's when governments and companies actually act. And that can cause harm because some people might get compromised in the process. It's a hard question. It's a hard situation. If you criminalize such actions, would you rather that then these gaps and leaks go unreported just because no one's acted on them? I don't know. These are not easy questions.
The only other question that I had for you was what do you think is at stake with this entire situation, with the decision that the court will take? But I believe that you've already sort of addressed that to a
Yeah,
certain extent.
I think the security of our systems, the privacy of our data, and the ability for journalists, researchers, academics, and activists to report problems is at stake over here, because you've gone after someone who was doing the right thing. And I think it's shameful that the UIDAI took them to court. If nothing else, I believe the UIDAI should be penalized for its actions against him.
Thanks, Nikhil. For anyone who wants to learn more about the Debayan Roy case, you can take a look at our website.